You just do a cold open? I don't fucking know.
Yeah, just introduce us and let's just dive into it.
All right.
Hey, this is Warren here. Just a few quick words from the editing bay. We had an episode partially recorded a couple months ago with a longer Nova recap, but a handful of things came up, and we never got around to getting the second half of the episode done. We'll probably follow up with a more thorough channel update sometime, but we had a couple good conversations here that I didn't want people to miss about a pivotal moment with initiative in one of my games that I think might be useful to you all. Hope you enjoy.
So, you guys want to talk about Nova at all, or
Yeah,
It's up to you.
let's talk about Nova for just a minute.
I'm trying to block out the memory. Trying
Yeah,
to block
I
out
wanna
some of the
say-
memories of it.
I want the opportunity to say, I told you so. Seize
Yeah,
the
well,
initiative.
Let's get to that, because we're gonna get because I knew I was gonna get the lecture one way or another.
Yes.
And so get this out there so at least I can learn, or at least, so folks can learn from my mistakes. Pillagers loot. I play against Iron Golems. This was, what's his name? Zach Gonzalez, I believe was his name. So he's running Iron Golems with a Vexmore, and Vexmore and Lassavir. So Lassavir is here. He has Vexmore in his hammer. He has his leader, what's the leader? Dominar?
Dominar, yeah.
Dominar here. He has an Ogre Breacher here. And again, I have my Varangard here, and I have my Vexmore here as well.
Yeah, because it was a slightly overloaded hammer, right? Was the deployment strategy?
We were loading up. Yeah, we were loading up the hammer. So, I have a very strong set of positioning in turn one. I positioned as far up as I could, so I had the opportunity to take the to collect a treasure on turn one if I chose to. I chose not to. He was forced to just sort of move up and was not in treasure range because of his opening positioning. But he also moved his Vexmore up first, giving me the opportunity to walk in with my Vexmore and hit for 15 off the bat. So he's got a wounded Vexmore. And he's got a bunch of other chaff coming up in the middle here as well. And what happens is in turn two, he roll. I get greedy on. I make two doubles and I make a third double. And I'm thinking, and I have like two singles left. He uses his two wild dice to give himself two singles. Because he had like two triples or something like that. No, he had three doubles. He had 0 singles, 3 doubles. And so, and I think to myself, okay, well, if he spends 2 doubles, he can force the roll off for initiative, but that's a lot of resources and he's not guaranteed to win it. But he does that anyway. So he spends 2 singles, forces the roll off, wins the roll off, and wins initiative. So with an onslaught, his Vexmore kills my Vexmore, and the Varangard gets tied up by chaff here in the middle, isn't able to kill it very effectively. So he winds up winning the middle here. I have chaff kind of running away from the ogre here. If the Therodon comes up here, gives Lassavir. So I do well over here. This is kind of up in the air, but my center is completely lost by this point because I got greedy on initiative. So this is where Fred lectures me about initiative.
So this is, I don't consider myself to be a high tier player. I think that any strength that I have in the game is in list building and list selection. But if I was going to give anybody advice that I've picked up over 3 years of playing the game competitively, I would say that make sure in round 3 and 4, you are 100% sure that you don't need the initiative. Even round 2, 3, and 4. I have won a lot of games by hyper prioritizing initiative and winning fights. When everything's scrummed up, a lot of times one onslaught isn't necessarily going to turn the tide of a battle as much as going first, getting the first swing, and killing something before it can hit back, or grabbing the objective and running, or whatever the case may be. And I see people make dice that they don't have a plan for. They're just like, oh, more doubles is better, or whatever is just better to have in my pool. If you have a specific plan, I'm going to use this double to win this fight in this activation. That's one thing. But if you're just making dice because more dice in your pool is good, you are probably not prioritizing initiative enough. I think in rounds 3 and 4 specifically, initiative is really, really important, more important than most dice, unless your faction is built around triples, like old KO, or you have a chance to make a high quad. These are things you can build a plan around. But if you're just like, I'll have 4 doubles this round and I'll find a way to use them. If you have that kind of dice, win initiative. Going first is really good. That is my advice. And we talked about this right before the event.
Yeah.
And then Warren tells me this story, and I'm like, man, this is a poster child of what I'm saying here.
Yep. Yeah, because like I have a fresh I go it's a complete flip of my Vexmore being dead versus his Vexmore being dead. And I played him the next day too, and I told him like, I'm pretty sure that if I don't make this mistake, I believe I am very, very favored to win.
Because then you're dominating the center, right?
Yeah, I'm dominating the center. I can send reinforcements to tie up the ogre on the other side, which gave me a little bit of trouble. Yeah, no question.
If you don't have a plan for your dice, you need to have at least take that time to double check that you shouldn't be going for initiative. I'm not saying it's always right, but I'm saying people don't consider it highly enough.
Yeah.
Have a plan for all of your dice, including your singles for initiative. That is the thrust of what I'm getting at. Don't just make doubles because doubles are good and you think you'll find a use for them
later. Or let the game get turned into a coin flip. Like I allowed a game that I won to get turned into a coin flip.
Yes.
I remember
a lot of times people are giving their opponent the opportunity to steal a win by not contesting initiative hard enough. If you're ahead, it can be really easy to be like, okay, I'm ahead. I can win out this round. But hey, if you can slam the door shut by going first and not let your opponent get back into the game, that's important too. All it takes is one hot roll if your opponent has an opportunity to get back in the game and they can really swing it. So if you can close the door, close the door.
Yeah.
I remember this conversation happening and how revelatory it was for me, in that I had that mentality of like, I'll just make out whatever dice I can unless I'm saving for something big. And I would, you get to your last like 1 or 2 units after you've moved your prime units for the round, and you're like, oh, I guess I'll throw this double on this chaff unit and hit just a little bit harder, and that probably would have been better served, trying to steal the initiative away in many cases. So,
and I also think there's a lot of a push, like mentally, for people to bank dice. Like, oh, I can't take initiative this turn because I'll use all of my wild dice and I'll only have 1 next turn. But if you seize initiative and do well, then you have less of a need for dice the next turn.
If you recognize a play that wins you the game or has a chance to win you the game outright, then obviously.
And I fall into that trap. I like to bank my dice.
Yeah. And
it's not always the best choice.
I mean, there's only 4 rounds, so
yeah.
Maybe round 1 it's a reasonable thing, but it's a diminishing value.
Yeah, I like to put my opponent on going first in round 1 in most mission types, and then I am aggressively interested in seizing the initiative round 2, 3, and 4 before I make my dice. I like to have a plan for initiative. So if you're aggressive, if you're playing aggressive units and you're going to get tied up in combat, like, you want your aggressive unit to go first. Maybe he kills 2 chaff units and he doesn't take damage on the crackback. Like all these kinds of things. So just something to consider. It's my one thing that I think I outplay people on more often than not. and I get outplayed in a lot of other ways. But in this one thing, I was like, I think I figured something out that's important. So
Yeah. So again, I'm mad at myself about this. Every so often, in your competitive career, you make mistakes that stick with you for a long time. You
Yes.
never forget. This is one of them, right? I've had mistakes that have stuck with me, like, for real, like 25 plus years ago. Like,
yes,
if I counter this spell, then I win this match. I make top 8 of Magic Regionals and go to Nationals, like stuff like
Yep.
that.
Oh yeah, I got a dozen of them I could rattle off right now. Like, just like, yep. And then I made this error, and it's haunted me to this day.
Yeah.
So, going back to this topic, I had a deja vu moment a couple weeks ago in a tournament where I was playing a similar style Varangard list against Iron Golems on what was essentially the same mission, Loot and Pillage. So this conversation and the lessons learned were not lost on me, as I was much more aggressive in protecting my initiative, and I think it played a big part in me protecting my key pieces from an Ogre Breacher who was threatening to dominate the middle of the board. This also kind of leads us into another topic where we take a deeper look at our Varangard Vexmore style lists and how they match up in the meta we see today. So I hope you find this informative as well.
No, Rob ran the table at 5-0, and there's no question he had probably even out of the 4 of them, he had the best list out of
Best
the
list,
4 of them.
And he's an outrageously tight player.
Yeah.
So,
like,
there you go.
Yeah, and even like our list didn't match up too well versus it. We'll actually talk a little bit about the kind of the after effects of this too, kind of the meta going forward. I had a few thoughts. I never got to do with my recap. I thought I was going to, piggyback on someone else to do a recap, so we're doing it here. Just other lessons learned from all of this. Again, I don't think the 3-2 record is completely indicative of how good the list is, but it kind of brings up. We'll talk about this now and kind of the stuff going forward. So I had a handful of conversations on Discord with Rob and a few other folks afterwards about like why they took the list they did and stuff like that. And so Rob obviously has played against Vexmore Varangard lists. And so even though Vexmore, Varangard, Therodon are highly efficient pieces that do a very good job of converting doubles into extra damage, just the fact that like certain Titans are like kind of stat check models, and he was playing, double Mega Boss, or if you're playing Ogres or something like that, you can play Ogres and not worry too much about Varangard or not worry too much about Vexmore. And
I would walk any Ogre Titan up to either one of those models and just be like, let's trade blows.
Yeah. 1v1. And a 1v1, you're not winning anything 1v1. So like, we discovered that, in order to take a Tyrant out or to take a Gut Lord out, we need to hopefully set up a 2v1 situation to take a guy out and then hope for the best. So if we're going to kind of talk about like where the meta is kind of going right now, and
destruction.
Obviously destruction, just in general, like Titan meta is what I was going to say, because so all the cheap format defining chaff got nerfed back in May, and so now you're seeing this move towards, all right, who's got the biggest fighter on the board, or the biggest set of fighters on the board, because you're not going to break the game with 50-point chaff anymore, or spamming 40-point chaff or whatever.
Okay, so you made it all the way to the end. I just want to thank you guys for sticking it out all the way to the end and for subscribing to us. There's a lot more prolific content creators out there, but I think we've offered a unique deep dive into the strategy underneath the surface of this game since we first started, and I stand by everything we say on this channel. I want you guys to stay tuned for one more episode in the future, and thanks for watching.
So while we're here, as the time recording is September 29th, 2024. And if the same format is used for Nova next year, I would like to congratulate 3 Heroes, 1 Chaff on their second consecutive 1 through 4 sweep. in the 2025 Nova Open Grand Tournament.
Next time, just use Swiss.